Larry tried to kill me.
Yeah. I was so thoroughly disgusted.
I mean, think about it. Why does it make you special to do what you do?
Packers jumping around. They rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. Elway can run inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line. My goodness.
Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
There's also Brian Clady and Bob Miller. Third and long 3. Going deep. Oh, and he's got Thomas. Goodbye. Touchdown.
Here we go. First snap of the overtime. The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him. Green to the 30. To the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on the New England. They win it on the first play of overtime.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast. I am your host, Mundungus Creevy, alongside my co-host, Glenn Hauser, sitting there in the dark in the museum, and Cameron Parker. It's been an interesting weekend. We got some playoff results. We've got some potential retirements. We've got some coaching news, all kinds of stuff. But first things first, how y'all doing?
I'm getting anxious, man. I want some news. I want some updates from today.
It's been a little bit stressful. I mean, we had the news the Sean Payton interview was today, but I mean, we've not heard anything. We've not heard anything as far we've actually not even gotten a tweet about Raheem Morris. That the Broncos have completed an interview with Raheem Morris. So on both fronts, like we've not gotten anything. Hi, Bree.
Hello. Oh, okay. Yeah. Hello. Avatar, Jeffrey, Bryan,
guys.
Ty, what's going on, everybody? Bree as well. So let's take a quick look at the playoff games that happened this weekend and what we're looking at this upcoming weekend. So San Francisco and Dallas pulled it off. So they're going to be facing this Sunday. Buffalo and Cincinnati move forward. So they're playing this weekend. Philly didn't do anything, but they move ahead this weekend. Anyways, with the Giants.
Bye week.
With that, no. The Giants beat the Vikings, which I thought was interesting. Like every game this weekend was good except for 2.
Yeah.
The Cowboys-Bucks game was, oddly enough, that one was basically a blowout. And then, what was the other blowout?
The Seahawks and Niners.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the Chargers Jags was a blowout.
First half.
Dude, that was nuts. Well, and then like the very last play where he heaves it up, and then it hits him in the left hand. Like
what?
Oh,
even the Bengals and the Ravens game was crazy at the final minute because was it 4th and 20 or something like that? Hundley heaved it to the end zone and it was incomplete, but like just out of the outstretched arm of the receiver. So yeah, it was a fun weekend. I mean, and I think what was one of the other biggest takeaways was there wasn't like an overall surprise. Like with the teams that won, and so I will say, if you're probably to say maybe what was one of the biggest surprises, I'd probably say how good that Giants team played. I mean, I know that Brian Daboll's had a great year, and he's probably coach of the year, or up for coach of the year, right? Because there's a ton to choose from. But I don't think we could have anticipated that Giants team doing that to, should I say that Vikings team, even though the Vikings were kind of hit and miss at the tail end of the year.
Well, who was the Vikings quarterback? Just refresh my memory.
Tom Brady.
Exactly.
No,
exactly. No, it's Kirk Cousins. I mean, this guy's not known for coming in the clutch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then you've got the which I think is going to be a fun game, the Chiefs and the Jags. I'm excited to see that game. I think the Jags are going to surprise people. I think they're going to win. Just me.
Yeah, the Jags somehow come back from a 27-point deficit, come back, win that game, and the offensive
with
staff,
a -5 turnover margin too.
And the offensive staff loses their job for the Chargers. Interesting how that works. But yeah, I think you're right, Mike. I mean, these guys somehow got a reservation for Waffle House after the game, after the win. These Jaguars, the Jaguars. Trevor, you didn't see that? Trevor's wife called ahead. A few of the players went to the Waffle House. They had like 20 people there. So I mean, this is a team that everybody is behind. If you can get an actual reservation there, you could upset the AFC #1 seed.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the Jaguars fun. I don't know if they'll beat Kansas City, but I mean, when you think about like where they were at the beginning point of this season, for all the leaks and everything that was going to happen with the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching search, it was Byron Leftwich, and now Leftwich is out of a job down there at Tampa. The Buccaneers decided to.
Is that official?
Yeah, they fired him this morning.
What?
Yeah, and so Leftwich is gone, and so the potential front runner of that Jag job last year, at the beginning of this cycle, doesn't work out. They end up circling on Doug Peterson, and for a Jacksonville Jaguars franchise that has been struggling mightily the last handful of years, if not, more and more, like the fact they were able to successfully get Doug Peterson was probably the best thing for that franchise, really.
Yeah, Cam, I do need to correct you. Todd Bowles said today that there's been no decision made on Leftwich yet.
I saw from the Pewter report, so I just
no, they the Pewter report definitely thinks that he's gone, which is unfortunate. It's but yeah, just going back to the whole Buccaneers situation. I know Bree is despondent. I'm not sure what happened on 2/2/14, but can't remember exactly. But my guess is that after
the Seahawks, the Super Bowl with the Seahawks.
Yeah, but she would have enjoyed
it. Was the 2013 season. We lost to the Seahawks in the Super Bowl.
The 43-8.
Okay, I was there actually. Never mind. But I think after Brady thanked the press that the car that he jumped into raced him off to the Daisy Hill puppy farm to be put out to pasture based on last night's performance, because he looked old. He looked like if I were running around there. But I mean, I say that facetiously, but I do think he is coming back.
And that's two things that I want to cover, because there's two, I guess, major questions about next season. One would be Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, and what do you do there? And then the other one is Tom Brady, because we've heard retirement, we've heard staying at the Bucs, but we've also heard that he wants out of the Bucs and that he's going to go to the Raiders, because that's where Josh McDaniels at. Which one do you see as more likely?
I think he's going to go to the Dolphins.
Dolphins.
I honestly, I don't know what Tom Brady is going to do. There's a few ways that he can look at it. Obviously, we've been down the rodeo before of when he's ended a year sort of like this. We've been contemplating, surely he's going to retire now, or surely he's not going to retire. As far as going out that way, and that was a pretty pathetic way to go out if you're Brady. And I know that he had the 1 year where he threw the pick six. I want to say it was through the Titans, was in that playoff game.
Logan Ryan.
Yeah.
Last game.
and I think that was like the last game before he went over to Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. Or, but I mean, yeah. So we've had this conversation before, but I think the one thing is that he'll definitely have suitors, and and Bree's right. Like to at least talk about the offense. It was bad. Like that offensive line was really bad, and like let's remember too that like they did not have, or they lost Tristan Wirfs for the season, and that they had Ryan Jensen come back for the first time all season, and they activated him. So I mean,
last night,
last night on Monday. So I mean, it was very clear that Brady was struggling, but the offensive line also did him no favors whatsoever.
So real quick before I hit Breeze, Avatars, if I get an update, I'll send it your way, but it's coming. Breeze says, let's get something straight. The O-line and Todd Bowles was a big issue. Receiver issues. Brady played off, but they stuck to the run way too much. Let the GOAT throw. Now, if I recall, last night Brady was over 50 throws.
He had over 60, Mike.
So let the GOAT throw doesn't really work if he throws for 60 times in a game. What were the receiver issues? Were they injured this year? Because as far as I know, he still had Godwin was out there, Evans was out there. The only thing that wasn't out there was Gronkowski. And if Gronkowski makes that big of a difference, then he's the all-time GOAT.
I mean, they kind of had some injuries throughout Julio Jones. Julio Jones was kind of banged up through the year. I think Godwin was still kind of dealing with some of the stuff that he had been kind of recovering from with his ACL injury. And even the tight end room had been up and down until K. Dotton really solidified. Kudos to Boggins, by the way. He'd hate me if I didn't say, K. Dotton's name. But yeah, K. Dotton solidified himself as tight end one for the Bucs. And so, I mean, they've been kind of, an influx of room.
Take an unbiased approach. Okay, so let's look at this from the outside looking in, right?
Yep.
Like when you compare Brady last night to what we saw even the last two seasons, he just didn't look the same.
Yeah.
Like the offensive line was more or less what he had last year. The receivers are more.
No, it wasn't. The offensive line was absolute shit this year. I mean, he really didn't stand a chance. And
okay, I'll give
it's
you
fun.
that
It's fun to tease about Brady. Mike, 35 of 66 last night.
Yeah,
351 yards, 2 TDs, and interception.
Well, and I know that Tom Brady is like the greatest quarterback to ever play, but at the same time, Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles, like that's a big offensive drop off. The offense didn't look the same. They didn't click right. Brady was making throws that he normally doesn't throw. Just some of them were just weird. There were a couple throws where it's like, are we looking at Russell Wilson this season? Like, where the hell was that ball going? Like, there was just a lot of throws where that didn't make sense.
So
yeah, I mean, and he did. I mean, he looked really bad. And kudos to a guy who might end up getting a second job interview, Dan Quinn with the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, if there's one thing that I can actually say about that game, from the defensive perspective of the Cowboys, is that Dan Quinn absolutely deserved more interviews that should be coming his way. I mean, that was really impressive what they were able to do with Brady. Obviously, as we said, the offensive line and stuff didn't do him any favors, but they were getting at Brady, and Brady was making some really bad decisions, uncharacteristic decisions. The one interception in the back of the end zone, where I wonder if he was trying, to throw it away, but instead he basically just threw it to the back of the end zone, and I forget who it was, picked it off. But yeah, it was definitely a masterful performance by Quinn.
Yeah, I feel like if we're talking about Quinn, I got to put my hat on backwards. But I was just, I was rooting. I was rooting for Dallas last night just to bide us some time on Mike McCarthy getting canned, because it gives us an opportunity to visit with Peyton today, and then talk to Quinn later on this week, and not have them talking to Jerry Jones about the potential opening there if Dallas had choked it again. Just going back to that game also, in addition to the 66 passes, Tampa, how many rushing attempts do you think they had combined with 2 running backs? Only 2 guys touched the balls in rushing. How many total rushing attempts?
Well, it wasn't a lot. 25?
12.
Jeez.
12 and 66 is the discrepancy in terms of rushing and passing. That is, you can't win that way.
Yeah, it's not a recipe for success. The Broncos know that quite well. I mean, anytime you throw that, throw it around about 40 plus times a game versus running the rock, 20 to 30 times a game, you're not going to win very many football games.
Yeah, I think it was like what I told Bill last night when we were watching the game was, when you watch Tom Brady, you expect to see the Tom Brady that you're used to over the last 20 some odd years. I'm not saying he looks bad, but he looks average. And an average Tom Brady is a drop-off from what we normally see.
Yeah, but think about it. I mean, this guy is not allowed to have a bad game. And, of course, you don't want to have a bad game in the playoffs. I mean, the team was 8-9. That's not a team that, if they weren't in such a crappy division, they wouldn't have even made the playoffs to begin with, right? But Jeff mentioned it in the comments. Brady's going to come back strong, and I know I had referenced that I think he's going to the Dolphins, and I really do. I think Tua's still on a rookie contract. He's got these health issues. They can basically bring Brady in. They wanted Brady to begin with before the crap hit the fan. Dolphins lost a first-round pick because of the whole bringing in Sean Payton, Tom Brady, the whole works. So the owner is a Michigan guy. Brady's two out of his 3 kids live in Miami. So if Miami's going to lose a first-round pick because of these flirtations that they had that resulted in some tampering, why not bring the guy you wanted initially? And so, essentially, you're trading a first-round pick for Tom Brady. He's going to slide right into the starting position. There's not going to be a quarterback controversy because they can say that Tua can still get himself healthy. I mean, I think it's just, I think it's absolute no-brainer.
I think there's 3 teams for me that it would be kicking the tires on Brady. It would be San Francisco, Vegas, and Miami. I think those are the 3 teams that I would be. I can't see the Jets doing it, but I mean, back to the Brady comment, I think that's also the beautiful thing about Brady, because even though he was struggling, on Monday night, there was still and I guess we could have former Nebraska Cornhusker Brett Maher to thank for that because he sucked, but I think that there was still moments within that game where you were telling yourself, okay, Brady's probably going to get himself out of this. They're going to make it a game, and they never did. But that's the beautiful thing about Brady is you always feel going into every single game with him at quarterback that you're going to win a football game.
But Cam, how about when they scored the touchdown late and then got the onside kick and Brady threw the bomb and Evans ended up dropping it?
Oh.
I mean, had Evans caught that, can you imagine the scrambling on the Dallas side? Holy crap, this dude is doing it again. I agree, Bree, 100%. Not only that, no income tax in Florida. The guy gets an instant raise. Yep. Cam mentioned San Francisco. I think there's 0 chance the Niners are going to bring even.
And there are some teams that just don't make sense. And that's the one thing I didn't understand about the Raiders. I get the McDaniels connection, but outside of that, Tom Brady's 46 years old. We have no idea how many years he's got left. 1, 2,
in life,
maybe 15. But if Tom Brady is going to go to a team where he's focused on getting another Super Bowl, that eliminates a lot of teams. You can't tell me that the Raiders are better than the Bucs. And so if he's wanting to leave the Bucs, why would you go to the Raiders? The Raiders are not a Super Bowl contender. The Niners got Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, so they got their own quarterback thing. I mean, it honestly makes sense to be Miami because Miami's there.
I agree with you. I agree, but I was just sort of, if we're listing 3 teams, those were the only 3 teams that were right off the cuff that just.
Because you can list a good 5 or 6 to where maybe that they could use a quarterback, but which one of those teams is actually playoff contenders, right? He's not going to go to the Jets. He's not going to go to the Texans. He's not going to go to I don't know, any other stupid team that sucks.
Yeah.
There's only maybe
if,
one or two.
Yeah, if Brady is not going to the Raiders, and it doesn't sound like any of us think he is, what is the Raiders' strategy? You know, they dumped Derek Carr, they torched him on the way out. What is their plan?
I still think it's Jimmy G.
Yeah.
That would make the most amount of sense to have somebody step in and just take over. Because if you're not going to get Brady, Jimmy G was his backup, and he was a starter in San Francisco. Bring Jimmy G in, and then draft a quarterback.
Well, you know, it's funny.
How do you think Jimmy G would do in the Vegas nightlife? Anyway,
horrible. That's why I think they should get him.
Well, you know, it's actually kind of funny. It's actually kind of funny though, because we were thinking the Jets for Jimmy G, and I know I've been throwing that around. I don't think it's out of the question that New England might kick the tires back on Jimmy G, with the stuff that's gone on with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, you know, and especially with the whole nonsense that went around with Bill Belichick not wanting to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, you know, and actually, this is a side note within that, around that point in time, the 49ers did call and ask about Tom Brady before acquiring Jimmy Garoppolo. That was a fun little fact that I remember with that. So just something that's kind of in the back of my head there. But I mean, I think the Vegas thing is definitely interesting now with the McDaniels connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jeff has a good comment there on the bottom.
Yeah, so does Bill.
Not as good as Jeff's.
Well, I know, and
I'm just kidding.
But like, does Brady make Miami more of a contender than Tua would?
Yes.
Tua did not play bad. Tua was pretty good this season.
No, I just think the thing that Brady would be excellent there is, I think that you have two legitimate wide receivers where Brady is great at anticipatory throws. That may be something that we saw at times with how good Tua was with both those receivers, but Brady's just, you know, so good at that when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, you know, and Mike Gesicki, let's not forget about Mike Gesicki. Yeah. And oh, by the way, you have Mike McDaniel, who may be already a top 10 coach in the National Football League as far as calling plays.
Just chilling, vaping on the sidelines.
Possibly. I mean, I think that combination would be like chef's kiss, honestly. Like that combination with him would be pretty great.
Yeah, so Jeff's thinking the Jets go hard after Lamar Jackson. And I can't even believe we're having the conversation that the Ravens might let Lamar Jackson go. Doesn't make any sense. But it looks like it's something that's going to happen.
It's a weird situation for them though, because
can the Jets afford him though?
Can the Jets afford what?
Could the Jets afford Lamar Jackson with what he's going to want contract wise? I don't know what the salary cap looks like because I don't care about the Jets.
Yeah, but look at who the Jets are paying for quarterback, man. They've got a rookie contract. They White is a free agent, and they got Joe Flacco. I mean, their commitment to quarterback is Zippo,
and they will commit hard to a quarterback this year. So I mean, you know, I don't know how logical it would be, but you know, I think it would be interesting maybe to do like this is just me kind of like creating an own rumor mill, but it'd be a fun little sign and trade, you know? So like for like San Francisco, you do a sign and trade, you trade Lamar to San Francisco, and then you trade Trey Lance to Baltimore.
San Francisco is going to be they're in great shape on quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think San Francisco needs to worry about anything.
No, they definitely don't. I'm just as a dream scenario of Lamar Jackson and that Mike Shanahan offense would be pretty insane.
So my question is, going back to San Francisco, you have to think that if Brock Purdy gets them anywhere close to the AFC Championship, he starts next year no matter what. So what do they do with Trey Lance?
I don't think Brock Purdy's going to get them anywhere near the AFC Championship, to be honest.
Well, they're one game away right now. So
no, I'm joking. You said AFC Championship. You misspoke.
NFC, my bad. NFC.
I know. Dude, why not? I mean, the guy's seventh round pick. You have Trey Lance again, a rookie contract with 3 years to go. We don't even know what his future holds,
Right.
his
So
ability.
wouldn't you trade him now to get the highest trade
No,
value?
no, you hang on to him and you maximize because you already have a guy that is playing under the most intense pressure and delivering, and he's the last pick in the draft. I mean, it's an unbelievable stroke of luck for the Niners that they have somebody like that. And then you have Trey Lance. What if Trey Lance turns out to be once he gets healthy, turns out to be this incredible quarterback? So
it's a secret, Ty.
I think that's that's the beautiful thing about San Francisco is you can plug basically any quarterback there and they will succeed the way things are with Kyle Shanahan and that offense. And I think when you have, I guess you could say, a younger version of Jimmy Garoppolo, who is much more athletic, the way that he can operate the pocket with Brock Purdy, I think is enticing. But I still give the edge a little bit to Trey Lance because of the fact that they gave so much to him as far as trading up for him and really just basically just trading assets away to make sure that they got him. And so I think that he would still probably have the edge just a little bit because of the fact of how much they've invested within him. But I'm not going to count the fact that Brock Purdy would at least be entering the conversation. In fact, I think he even had that conversation entering in for that Seattle game because he played impressive against the divisional opponent was the Seahawks. So in a playoff game, obviously at home, but I mean he played really, really well for a guy that was pretty crappy at the tail end of his Iowa State Cyclone career. To do what he did there with the offense that he had with Shanahan, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah. So let's take a look and we'll guesstimate who we think is going to be making each championship game. So Dallas and San Francisco, who pulls that one out?
Niners. I don't have much faith in Dallas. I don't know about you.
No, I think Niners too. Buffalo, Cincinnati.
Based on what we've been seeing, I think Cincinnati.
Okay.
Cam, you can yell in anytime.
No, I'm just thinking. I think that Buffalo's weird. That was if you're thinking as far as the team that even though they won but they still disappointed, it would be Buffalo, because Buffalo feels like a team that is they only go after the big play, and not a bad thing. But it feels like since he's also the right time, right now, and so I don't know. I just the momentum just feels that way with Cincinnati, and your heart is certainly probably pulling for Buffalo with the whole DeMar Hamlin situation and and everything else. But and who knows? Maybe a game like that'll revitalize the spirits a little bit. But I do think it'll be a good game. I just wonder how. You want to see the Buffalo Bills team that we saw at the beginning of the year that was just unstoppable.
But even outside of the DeMar Hamlin situation, the Bills fans are really unreal. I mean, they are so loyal. It's such an incredible community. They truly do deserve a Super Bowl to taste this, what it's like to win a Super Bowl. What's cool is Jeff Bryan, who's in our chat, he actually was at the Bills game where Hines returned both of those kickoffs, or both of those returns for a touchdown, which he said was bedlam. So, it's yeah. I like Cincinnati too. Joe Burrow's my favorite non-Bronco in the NFL at this point, but it just seems like Buffalo's making a lot of mistakes. They're not closing things out. It has nothing to do with the trauma of what happened a few weeks ago. This was happening. Like Josh Allen was throwing some picks, in the red zone and the end zone, inopportune times, throughout the course of the season, as it wore on a little bit. They're two incredibly likable teams, but I think that Cincinnati probably has the edge at this point.
Okay, then let's go Eagles and Giants.
I think that's probably one of the more fascinating ones for me. You got another divisional game basically, but this time, in the next round of the playoffs. And from what we can tell, you have a healthy Jalen Hurts. You have a healthy Jalen Hurts with the injury report. He wasn't there, and so I'd be a little bit curious to find out. Not that the Giants were for real when they beat Minnesota, this last weekend, but I mean, what a way to shock the world even more. And I think that if you're, an underdog fan, the fact that maybe there's you're rooting for a Jags and Giants Super Bowl as far as an underdog story. But I'm just so impressed with how well coached both the Eagles and the Giants are. So I'm really looking forward to that game.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Giants on that one. I don't trust the Eagles.
Well, but this is the first time we've seen them truly succeed all year, and I mean, so I don't know. I'm probably give it to the Eagles the way that they are depth wise. Their depth is insane, defensively, and they do have some weapons, even with Jalen Hurts running the football. So I will still give the edge to the Eagles personally.
I'm gonna go with the Eagles, though I do think it's gonna be a good game. And you think Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley have cost the Giants a few bucks these last few weeks? I would say yes. When you harken back to before the season and the Saquon, there was some question whether the Giants were going to pay his $7 million salary this year. And I mean, looking back, I mean, can you imagine if the Broncos had a guy with that type of performance this year? It would have been a entirely different story for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So then you go into the Chiefs and the Jags.
Yeah. Logic goes to you got to pick the Chiefs. But we're all rooting for the Jags.
I'm going Jags. You say what you want.
Cam, yeah, I speak your name. That's exactly how I feel. I think it's very hard to pick against the Chiefs at home, but man, would that be a fun upset to watch the people strolling out of Arrowhead to the parking lot.
And as a Bronco fan, to see not just the Broncos beat the Chargers in Week 18, but then to see the Jaguars beat the Chargers, and then if they were to beat the Chiefs, so basically divisional opponents in back-to-back weeks, I guarantee you would be having a lot of Broncos fans. Not that there aren't, right now, but there would be a lot of Broncos fans be rooting for the Jacksonville Jaguars if they did in fact beat the Chiefs.
So Ty, going back to the Eagles game in Pennsylvania, are people a little concerned about the Giants, or what's the feel this week? If you don't mind throwing that in the comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So before we go into any coaching search stuff, I did want to bring up that one of our we'll call him a friend of the network. That'll work. Ryan Edwards is basically getting, I think Ben called it a promotion.
It's definitely a promotion
from Broncos Country Tonight to doing the Sports Zoo, the KOA Sports Zoo with Dave Logan and Big Al. And that is a huge opportunity. Congrats to him. Ryan, it is very well deserved. We definitely enjoyed you on Broncos Country Tonight, but go with God, my friend. Have some fun.
You know what I love about this news, and as someone who loves Broncos Country Tonight and would sit here and on the East Coast and have the AirPods in and enjoy the show and the chemistry with Ben and the jokes and for Ryan to get this opportunity to do drive time, the guy is, and I tweeted it earlier, he's one of the best broadcasters I've ever heard. He's incredibly liked person. Super nice guy. If you've ever interacted with him on air, off air, on social media or so, what's kind of neat is a lot of times someone has to something has to occur for really them to see how appreciated they are. And when this news broke or was announced within the last couple hours, to see the comments and the retweets and just the reaction and the happiness that people had for Ryan. I hope he's able to sit back and read all these comments and realize that, how truly loved, admired, respected that he is by people that love the Broncos and love Denver sports. So I'm excited for him, and we'll certainly be checking out the new gig for sure.
To piggyback off of that, me knowing him personally, and getting the opportunity to interact with him personally, and when we have our pickup football games and stuff with Bree and everybody else, Mario, other friends of the show, when you get a chance to see him personally and you get to see the type of person that he is, you only have just that greater appreciation for him more. And actually knowing him for quite a long time for myself, people may not know this if you're new listeners of the 5280 podcast, but I was an intern with Lincoln Financial Media, and Lincoln Financial Media owned 104.3 The Fan at the time when Ryan Edwards was there. And this is how great this story is back when I was there as an intern, Ryan Edwards was a producer of The Drive, which was hosted by D-Mac and Big Al. And we all know Big Al is now, doing the show with JoJo now, and now Ryan Edwards. So to see the full circle of where it is great. And one of the best things I remember from that time, at 104.3 The Fan as an intern, was I asked Ryan do you see yourself doing this in the future? And he said, I don't know. I don't necessarily know, where I would, where I'll be, years down the line. But to see where he is now, it's gratifying because you can clearly tell the hard work that he puts in. You can clearly tell to what you said, how much he's loved. He's just such a tremendous, tremendous human being. And so for anybody that, hasn't had the opportunity to meet him, highly, highly recommend it if you can.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on your, when you're talking about the fan, come on, do better. I mean, really, getting sued because you're stealing people's stuff, come on. And we'll leave it at that. But just saying, do better. So
pull up Ty's comment if you could, Mike.
We
got some interest. Yes.
Cliff just commented that the interviews of Peyton and Morris have concluded. No deal for either. And that's exactly where I was going. We heard yesterday that Harbaugh was going back to Michigan, which I don't know. Like I wanted Harbaugh to be the Broncos coach because I like the idea of who he'd be bringing in. But it always kind of felt like if Michigan paid him the money he wanted, he would stay. So with Harbaugh being gone, or at least not a candidate for the Broncos anymore, everybody's tuning in on Sean Payton. But like, are you guys that high on Sean Payton? Because I'm not.
I am.
Yeah.
And it's not like a coaching thing. He obviously is the best available coach in the hiring cycle. My concern is what you have to give up for him, because we heard it first, but then it's like, well, it's a first and then possibly a couple threes. It's a first and possibly a player. It's, what do we have to give up to get him?
So in regards to Harbaugh, I actually didn't think he was going to stay at Michigan. I thought his ass was really still chapped from the fact that they had given him a pay cut just a handful of years ago. I think he felt really disrespected. He seems like the kind of guy that holds a grudge. The fact that he wanted the Vikings or the Raiders gigs last year in a major way, I didn't think he was using the Broncos for leverage, because quite honestly, anything that Michigan could pay him, the Broncos could pay him more. So I didn't see it that way. I was a little disappointed that things worked out because just like you, Mike, I was excited about the potential staff that he could have, like a David Shaw as a potential offensive coordinator, keeping Evero as the defensive coordinator. Evero was on his Harbaugh's staff with the Niners for 4 years. So that's what I was looking forward to. Like you, I'm the compensation is not something I'm crazy about. If it works out that we're trading Bradley Chubb for a top tier coach that had success with an undersized quarterback and is viewed as an offensive genius, I'm cool with that. I don't necessarily want to give up any of our bigger name players, any more picks. So if we can just do it with the late first rounder, I'm cool with that.
Well, and Cam, before you go into like the positives of why you like Peyton, I want to give one more reason why I'm not a fan of Peyton, and that's because it's pretty well known that Peyton kind of walked out on the Saints, and I don't like. It takes a lot for me to trust that he won't get to a certain point where he's like, nah, I don't like this anymore, and just walk out. Like, it freaks me out that we're going to give up something for him, and then 3 years down the line, he's like, nah, this ain't working, I'm leaving.
Well, admittedly, they were in cap hell. And when that's a really bad situation and a pretty toxic situation at that, as far as cap space, you want to leave as much as you can probably, or see the first sign, out the door and head out. Real quick on Harbaugh though. I sort of saw it as a win-win for him. Because it was definitely Denver and it was definitely Michigan. It was Denver and Michigan, and he was either going to stay at Michigan or he was going to go to the Denver Broncos, and clearly the Broncos were going to offer him more. And I think at the end of the day, it was just about how loyal he would be to Michigan. And I actually really commend him for that, because, he has the opportunity to be a Bo Schembechler again, for that type of coach for Michigan. And, from a Michigan perspective, a Big Ten perspective, USC and UCLA are coming in. And not to mention, like, the moment that you leave, you're opening a significant door for the Big Ten in general. And, and so I think that he just saw an opportunity where, one, his heart was now clearly in the program in Michigan. And so, I just think that it was win-win for him. He was definitely what the Broncos needed out of a head coach the most. But I think that if you look at it from just the overall point of view of what they need, Sean Payton is clearly, clearly the guy going forward, as far as, the offensive-minded guy that they can. In the pick stuff, I'm not a huge fan of giving assets like, draft capital, necessarily for Sean Payton, but at the end of the day, it's not my decision. And so if you do come to terms with a Bradley Chubb for a Sean Payton deal, at the end of the day, you take that 12 times out of 10. And I've heard conflicting reports from a lot of people that you can trade players and not trade players. I heard from a guy on Locked On Saints that said you cannot trade players for a head coach. So I've heard kind of conflicting reports about trading players for a head coach. But at the end of the day, Payton mentioned it himself, as far as, how important it is for structure and ownership. And the Broncos check a lot of those boxes. And I think that, for the Broncos and what they need, you take that, again, 12 times out of 10, because the head coach is the most important decision you can ever make next to a general manager and an owner. And so I think that if you can do that, you do take that deal, regardless of the draft capital.
So in regards to him walking out on the team, he was there for a very, very long time. They were not in a strong cap situation for years prior to him choosing to leave. He also didn't just disappear. He ended up with a pretty lucrative, from what I understand, TV gig, right? So I don't look at it as he bailed. I know the Bounty Gate, we have some comments in the chat about Bounty Gate. I would think that a lot of teams probably participate in something like that. But just, and I'm not saying you're right. And I'm not excusing it. But the guy lost a whole year. One of the benefits of getting a Sean Payton, or a couple of the benefits, is your coach's salary does not fall under the salary cap, obviously. So we can pay this guy whatever he wants. I think he would probably mesh well with George Payton. I think we could. I think that there could be a nice collaboration there. But the Broncos are also in a situation where, because we don't have a lot of draft picks, we're going to be really reliant on signing free agents this year. So if you have a Sean Payton lined up as your head coach, and you have all of this draft or all of this cap room, you can re-sign guys. You can bring, attract some of your, free agents from around the league. I think that a splashy head coach like that does give the team instant credibility in the eyes of other players.
Yeah, and the other thing is that, and we're not in the minds of the Penners. We're not in the minds of the Walter Penner group, or even Condoleezza for that matter. But if you lose out,
I just want to be in the bank account. That's all I.
Mike just wants to be in there.
I just want to be part of the bank account.
But I think that when you lose out on Harbaugh, who was probably your main target, there's probably mixed reviews there now, like whether or not he was the main target. I wonder if they will lose out on that. And I think that with Ben Johnson now pulling his name out of the Carolina situation, does the New Orleans Saints truly, truly want to trade within the division? It has happened before. It's happened with Bill Belichick. And I think it's happened with Bill Parcells, I believe, as well. So it has happened before where they have traded coaches within the division. It is very rare, but it has happened. And, as far as capital, is this something that, the Saints certainly want to do? It's a fair question. I can't see it happening. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I think at the end of the day, it's probably going to end up being the Denver Broncos and staying at Fox Sports is probably what it's going to end up coming down to.
See,
Cam, like you said,
I'm still seeing the Cardinals as that
no.
maybe.
Cardinals just hired a general manager, and reports are coming out that the Payton group were really pissed off with the fact that they hired a general manager, and so they're really turned off with that idea. And then you have the Houston Texans, which, as much as I hate that situation, and them firing coaches for 4 straight years, pretty much, but the fact that you have that many cap space and that many draft capital does have to certainly appeal to the Houston Texans. But I will say the fact that the Texans jumped in front of the Broncos for a Zoom interview, kind of tells me that I wonder if they felt like the Broncos were the leader in the clubhouse for Payton. So
Kamani wants to know, the one coach used to coach the Dolphins, I'm assuming he's talking about Brian Flores, got fired. If he didn't have a lawsuit against him, against the NFL, would he have a chance to be a head coach? Honestly, I think he'd be one of the top candidates.
No, I think I think he is a strong candidate for the Cardinals this year. I believe that because of some of the teams named in the lawsuit, including the Broncos, and he's really not a candidate for teams that would be included in that lawsuit. But for the rest of the NFL, I think he would be definitely a candidate, and I would love to see him get the job in Arizona, quite honestly. And kudos to Mike Tomlin for giving him an opportunity to come back this year in Pittsburgh, when it looked like the league was going to put him on ice for a season while the legal situation played out. So, Kamani, stay tuned. I think that he's going to get an opportunity with the Cardinals.
And also kudos. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but kudos to Vance Joseph, because he's very clearly well liked within that locker room, and maybe the 2 top candidates for that Cardinals job are Brian Flores and Vance Joseph. Maybe I don't know that for a fact, but Vance Joseph is from everything that I've been hearing and reading is Vance Joseph is a very legitimate candidate for the Cardinals head coaching job, and I think they're going to interview him tomorrow.
Yeah, and before I forget, and I continue to forget to say this over the last couple of weeks, but kudos to J.J. Watt. Like, you retired. You're one of the greatest defensive ends of all time. It sucks that you didn't have the chance to get a Super Bowl, because I really wish you'd been able to get one. But absolute fantastic person, fantastic player. The league is not going to be the same without you, but kudos on a retirement, retiring healthy, and having the time to spend with your wife and your son. So kudos to J.J. Watt.
And if you saw the video that they were playing of him in the meeting room, the person that announced that video was Vance Joseph. I don't know if you caught that, but
Yep. So let's take a quick stab at or a review of the coaches that we've interviewed and are going to interview. Ejiro Evero was first. Jim Caldwell, David Shaw, Raheem Morris, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, all done. And then D'Amico Ryans and Dan Quinn finish out this week. So there's every possibility that we have an answer next week, or they just bring in second interviews or third interviews starting next week.
I think Liz mentioned the possibility of I don't know how likely it is now. Just gauging the temperature of Broncos Twitter, myself included within that. But I mean,
you never trust Broncos Twitter.
But I mean, the fact that people want a decision now, would tell you that they want their head coach tomorrow. But Kliss mentioned, I want to say it was around the 23rd or 24th, where he could see the Broncos hiring a new head coach, which sort of tells me that they may not have a second round of interviews. And I would imagine your top two candidates at that point are going to end up being Dan Quinn and Sean Payton probably. But the fact that Dan Quinn has his name out there now doesn't mean he's not getting the interview, but he has his name out there now for the Indianapolis Colts job. And by the way, this is a subtle one for the Colts. Kudos to the Colts for literally interviewing every single candidate that's available. I'm not a huge Irsay fan, but they are literally doing every single bit of homework on every candidate.
However, poo on you if you stick with Jeff Saturday. I'm just throwing that out there.
That would be hilarious. By the way, it's also funny. I don't mean this to be funny, but it is kind of funny that Dan Quinn finds himself in literally the exact situation as it was last year, to where the Broncos hadn't hired him yet, but they were playing the San Francisco 49ers in a playoff game. And this year, the Broncos may hire Dan Quinn in this cycle, and they are playing the San Francisco 49ers in a playoff game.
Can you just imagine what the first thing Dan Quinn says to George Payton when he walks in that room? So last year didn't work out
Screw
very well.
You. Yeah.
It's Groundhog Day, right?
Jeff Ryan says Noah wants D'Amico Ryans in the worst way, and so does Seegers. We had him on the show last night. He is a big D'Amico Ryans guy.
Yeah.
I think if you were to rank the candidates for me, with Harbaugh now out of the mix, it would be Payton, and then if you go after that, I want to say it would be D'Amico Ryans would be right after that. And because the first time hire doesn't scare me in any way. You want to make sure you're hiring the best possible candidate, that is out there. And I even might put Jim Caldwell within that mix as well. I know he's 68, but I mean the guy can coach. I mean the guy has 62 and 50 in his career or something.
Yeah.
I mean he won at Detroit. 2
years in the playoffs out of 3.
Yeah, and so I mean Caldwell's in there. I think David Shaw is a very interesting name here. Now that we're going on a week of interviewing names, I think it's likely that Shaw, regardless of who the head coach is, sort of squeaks his way onto the staff in some way or another. In fact, a Sean Payton tidbit here. Back a few years ago, Payton spoke very glowingly about David Shaw back when I guess they had worked together on the Eagles staff, about how the fact that he wanted him to get a head coaching job. So I don't think it's out of the question that if Payton was the head coach or whoever, and with the Stanford connection, that Shaw is on the staff one way or another.
Mike Shanahan, there we go. Boom.
And also David Shaw's record. And also, Shaw's record with Stanford the last few years and how it really had dropped off. If you think about just particularly in the last 2 years, with Stanford's, strict academic requirements, the transfer portal, NIL, I can't see the Cardinal ever having a real strong football team again, just with those three things against them. They're not going to be attracting all sorts of guys because what is the NIL opportunity in Palo Alto at this point? So I don't look at his record the last couple of years and the fact that he said, it was walking away. I don't see that as a negative. If you actually take those couple of years away off his record, it is tremendous. And the guy is just, he's been pursued for a very long time for NFL jobs, and he's turned down just the opportunity to interview. He hasn't even, explored them. And then we would see him on the draft, and when he would talk about, he would do his analysis as a member of the, on the draft coverage. The guy was just so cool to watch. I mean,
and I think that's what he's mentioned. I think that's what's so fascinating about this for Shaw, because now that we've entered 2 weeks of coaching candidates, there's only one team that he's interviewed with, and it is Denver. And I think that's the thing, is people were kind of curious, what is his level of interest in the National Football League, right? And now that we're seeing with what he's been able to do as far as being an interview, it's quite interesting, the fact that his name's in the mix and it's only with one job. But yeah, and with about Harbaugh, I think that, that's the beautiful thing with Stanford and Shaw and Harbaugh, because the analogy is almost like Tim Duncan to David Robinson, or, Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. That kind of consistency is so rare, either at head coach or anywhere else, when you can go from Harbaugh to David Shaw and keep that consistency and still play at a high level and play really well on Saturdays, in competitive football in a conference that has kind of gone down a little bit. I mean, it's a big deal. And especially with what you said, how he's loved by the NFL and the NFL media. I get a kick out of watching him on draft coverage, because you educate yourself with prospects you may not even have known about. In fact, I like the whole test the knowledge sometimes when he's on the booth, about recalling a prospect or something like that, and they go to the highlight booth basically. So I think it's great, if he's at all considered for either the head coaching job or even on staff.
I think it's important too, in switching gears a little bit, to mention that Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions, decided he is not going to interview for any of the jobs this year, which is a huge shock. And I know that the guys looking for the young guns, the young offensive geniuses, are disappointed about Johnson not being available. And two, Cam, you put out a tweet very interestingly that cited a Mike Kliss account, but it was a fake account. And so maybe you can give your public service announcement about looking at Twitter handles before you believe and react.
Yeah. So someone, I can't exactly remember what the tweet was, but it was basically saying that, that the Broncos had agreed to a deal with Sean Payton, and there was a trade, involving Alberto Cuebanam, and, and so
the number one pick in Alberto. Yeah. That was the
so I can't stress this enough. Doesn't matter if it's the coaching cycle or NFL free agency. Whenever you have fake accounts like that, please pay attention to, what's out there. Obviously, it's a little bit hard because Kliss is not verified. For some reason, Kliss isn't verified. But pay attention to the account and what's on there, especially for Mike Kliss. And admittedly, it was tricky because it was at Mike Kliss with a small underscore at the very end.
Oh, it's so tricky. And it had his picture, the same picture he uses, and it had his name. So
and the same header as well. Yeah.
But if you know me or have seen my Twitter account at all, I'm a Dan Quinn fan. I like Dan Quinn. I like the idea of Dan Quinn. As I lean back into it, I love Dan Quinn. But the idea of Jim Caldwell as head coach kind of caught my eye a little bit, and then I started hearing rumors that Jim Caldwell was maybe not Jim Caldwell's thinking, but Jim Caldwell was being tied with Frank Reich as his offensive coordinator. And I think the possibility of having Jim Caldwell with Frank Reich that's huge. Frank Reich as for quarterbacks is amazing. So I don't know why you wouldn't want to have a Caldwell Frank Reich.
Why? What about Jim Caldwell and David Shaw? I mean, think of it. Caldwell was on the Baltimore John Harbaugh staff. So, I mean, there's clearly some conversation, and you would imagine there's at least some connection between he and David Shaw. So if Caldwell was head coach, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Caldwell and Shaw would be working together. So, and we mentioned it before, but it's just I don't know if the leap for Shaw would be straight offensive coordinator, just because he's not been in the league for about 15 or so years. And so he'd have to be on the staff at probably like a quarterback coach, passing game coordinator, or whatever. But I still feel though there's a chance. I think there's a chance that D'Amico Ryans could create some movement like Kevin O'Connell in this cycle after they interview him. Because I just think that he's just such a phenomenal coach. I think that, you clearly saw it on the game with the Seahawks and against the game against the Broncos. They're disciplined. I mean, he gets the most out of his players. He's a player coach. He's a former player, which you could clearly tell. Like he would have basically the voice of that locker room being a former player. I mean, I think that he would do really well. I don't know as far as the overall voice he'd have with ownership, because it'd almost be, would it be too young to have that kind of, strong voice within ownership? But I mean, he is clearly well liked, within the organization.
So yeah, D'Amico Ryan's left, Dan Quinn is left. We'll let you know if there's any other names added, but for right now, we got the 2 interviews left, and hopefully we have a head coach by next week. That would be fantastic.
I will have hopefully not gray hair by then, and maybe Glenn will actually grow hair by then.
Too late.
A little tuft.
Too late. Yeah, just a tuft right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to thank y'all for joining us on the show. That's going to about do it for us because there's really not much else to update because they just got done with the interviews. Make sure you check out the network. Check out all the shows we have on it. We got the Cluster Puck on Monday, 5280 on Tuesday. Next week, we'll then have Sports Nonsense and Whiskey starting right after the 5280 on Tuesdays. Moving forward, on Wednesdays, we'll have the Wild Wild West. Fridays, we have Bronco Bills Show, Bronco Breakdown. And you can catch us on the neighborhood more than likely on Saturdays with the Avalanche games going forward. So make sure you check that out as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Have yourselves a great day, a great week. Make sure you're watching for the coaching searches or the coaching hires. And we will see you guys later. Bye-bye.